I would believe it.
No idea.
No idea.
I do. Okay. You step the rest.
Look, I'm gonna step in the restroom. I'm gonna do the prayer. All right.
No, Mike has been introduced.
Well, thank you, Dave. We're going to get started. Here's the bell. Welcome to Rotary Club LaGrange, August 24, 2022. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation, which will be given by John Harrell. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we focus on benevolent objectives for the world, peace, tranquility, a true brotherhood of man, freedom from hunger, from oppression, from sickness, the freedom to choose our own destinies, let us reaffirm our commitment to our simple Rotary four-way test for all we do and support. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Let us reaffirm our commitment to high ethics in all we do. We give thanks for all the blessings, opportunities, and responsibilities that befall us as Rotarians. Lord, help us to serve.
Amen. Thank you, John. And Scott Landa will now come introduce our guests.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So we have, as far as I know, 3 guests. I'm sitting over in the corner, so I might miss somebody. Hopefully I did not. When I call your name, please stand and remain standing until I call all 3 of you guests. Chris Duane is a guest of Dante Lane. She's a past president of the Rotary Club in New Jersey. Fellow New Jerseyan, you like that? Marcy Miles is here, guest of Ken Miles, also happens to be his wife. And Courtney Clark, who's a guest of John Harrell. She's interning with John, so we'll have to forgive her for that. So welcome all 3 of you. Thank you for being here and enjoy your lunch.
Thank you, Scott, and congratulations to everybody that made it here again today. And of course, a big thanks to Father Tim and Emily Mansour and everyone else for letting us use their place on such very short notice. We thank them very much. Also, thanks to Leon for substituting for Jaja. A lot of people do a lot of things that don't get recognized, like people that helped get the Chick-fil-A set up. So thank you, all you over there. Birthdays and anniversaries. Jenny Copeland had a birthday on Monday. Ted Beesons is today. Kevin Henderson is this Saturday. Henry Jacobs is this Sunday. Is that right, Henry? Yeah. All right. John Harrell is this Monday. Is that right? It is. It is, okay. And Marquette Baker is next Wednesday. And I announced all those because we're going to be at United Way at Belmont next week, right? Gonna be there with Pat, so I'll be there. Club anniversaries: Morris Jones, 21 years on Monday. Carrie Weiss, 4 years on Monday. Karen Thompson, and guess who else? Rod Thompson, on 6 years today. Jake Jones is 18 years tomorrow. Jerry Scarborough, 9 years this Sunday. And Chuck Newman, 38 years this coming Monday. Wedding anniversaries: Roy and Fran Nichols were 56 years last Saturday. Tripp and Megan Penn, 28 years on Saturday. Marcy Miles has one coming up on Friday, to be 33 years. And won't ask her how many of those were figures, but and if my daughter Savannah was here, she would have a birthday on Sunday. Anyway, club announcements: always silence your cell phones. And like I said, congratulations on knowing where we're going to meet. Pretty soon, hopefully, it will calm down. Initially, like I said, we're at Delavant for United Way kickoff. The next Wednesday, the next Wednesday, we're with Mike over at the Coalition Assessment Center, and we'll be sending out directions through the bulletin, so you know how to get there. So 2 more weeks, not back at the country club. If you were wondering, the country club had a COVID outbreak during their 100th year bash, and were not able to host any meetings this week. Did all that. George Henry is not going to be here, but he was going to introduce our program, and in his spot, going to welcome Mike Wilson to come up and introduce the program for us.
I think I'm the third choice to introduce it. It is my pleasure today to introduce Henry Jacobs as our program. Henry is the Middle Chattahoochee Director for the Chattahoochee Riverkeeper. He oversees multiple outreach programs, including the West Point Lake Floating Classroom and the Neighborhood Water Watch. Henry also leads fundraising efforts, trash cleanups, and organizes community outings on the river and the lake. He grew up in Decatur, Georgia, attended LaGrange College, graduated in 2013 with a degree in history. He interned with Chattahoochee Riverkeeper before assuming a full-time role with the organization in August of 2013. He lives here in LaGrange with his wife, Robin, who currently serves on the LaGrange College Leadership Council and the Hillside Montessori School Board of Directors. In his spare time, he pursues photography, documentary filmmaking, and occasionally plays drums for Grammy-nominated blues musician John Tavius Willis. In 2019, he was included on the LaGrange Daily News 20 Under 40 list, and in 2020 was part of the Georgia Trend magazine's Georgia 40 Under 40 list. So please give a warm Rotary welcome to Henry Jacobs.
Thank you, Mike. Let's see you. All right. So I'm here to give an update on my work with Chattahoochee Riverkeeper, and as always, appreciate just being a member of this Rotary Club and getting to be with y'all every Wednesday. So, I'm gonna try to keep it succinct. I've got a number of images I kind of want to I'll flip through to kind of help tell the story of our work here in LaGrange, as well as Troup County, and then the surrounding really communities and region. So I'll start off here. I always like to start, and I know distance-wise, y'all might not be able to see every little detail, so I'll try to help kind of describe, but I always like starting with the map of the Chattahoochee River and its watershed, which is really kind of the scope, the area of our work. So the river starts up in North Georgia, up in the mountains, and it flows downhill until it gets to the Gulf of Mexico, near Apalachicola, Florida. And all the distance in between, about 400 or so miles of river. But that's, there's also all the creeks and the tributaries of the river. And then, we have a number of reservoirs on the Chattahoochee River as well. So West Point Lake is a man-made reservoir. You have Lake Lanier, another big federal reservoir. And then you have a few smaller lakes, like Lake Harding, which is a Georgia Power impounded. So more than 5 million people live within the Chattahoochee watershed. So, that's all the land area. It's not just by the river, but, here a few miles away from the river, we're still in the watershed. And when it's raining, the rainfall here is ultimately going to flow into the creeks flow into the river. So that's when I'm saying a watershed, that's what I mean. And as a river keeper, it's our work to look after this and make sure we have enough clean water. And to be a river keeper, I always like to mention that, we're part of a bigger alliance called the Waterkeeper Alliance. And you have around 300 or so river keepers, bay keepers around the country and around the world now. It's a movement that started in the 80s, and it's growing. And Chattahoochee Riverkeeper was fortunate to be one of the early kind of organizations to start up. And so definitely you have to kind of abide by a certain set of rules to be a river keeper. And, upholding clean water is definitely top of the list for that. I always like to just show, it's not just me. I get to work with a staff of 18 other colleagues, myself and one other, Ashley DeCinzi. We work here out of the LaGrange office, which is just up here on the square. And then we have a staff that works out of our Atlanta office. And then we have another small outreach office in Gainesville, Georgia, to kind of cover the headwaters of the river system. And we're fortunate, we've got a lot of people who know a lot of good, backgrounds, whether it's the science, of water monitoring, data collection, but then also people who are knowledgeable in the legal aspects of the environmental world. And then we also get to work with interns from local universities, colleges. So it's a good group, and we're also fortunate to have a board of directors of 25 people who represent a number of different kind of businesses, geographic areas of the watershed too. So fortunate to be with a good group of people, and I would hope most of y'all know kind of maybe the general story of Chattahoochee River Keeper at this point. I think you probably heard me speak to this club multiple times. So hopefully I'm doing my job in sharing kind of the message, but our whole story starts in Atlanta back in the early 90s. And really, I think, for decades, the city of Atlanta, it was cheaper for them to pay fines and to pollute the river with sewage than it was for them to fix the problem. And so after years of that kind of neglect, a group that took Chattahoochee Riverkeeper working with partners and others to bring a clean water lawsuit against the city of Atlanta, hold them accountable. And as a result of that lawsuit, the city of Atlanta has spent over $2 billion, has invested over $2 billion in their sewer treatment facilities. They've expanded, they've upgraded, they've replaced old broken pipes. And so really as a result, I like to think that was $2 billion invested in the river and in West Point Lake, which is 50 odd miles downstream of Atlanta. So, that's kind of our origin story. And yet, since that time, we've grown as an organization to address, the issues that continue to pop up, big and small, on the Chattahoochee River itself. And so, just kind of some images kind of to take you out on the water, every once in a while, we're out we've got a little patrol boat on the water itself, just kind of putting eyes on the river. And anytime we get a phone call from someone maybe out there fishing, they see something, they smell something, they'll call us, we're able to get out. And if it is an issue like a spill or something bad, we've built up over the years contacts with local utilities, municipalities. So typically we know exactly kind of who to go to in order to get an issue like a sewer spill resolved. And then a big part of, that kind of keeping eyes on the water is having volunteers from the community help us collect water samples on a regular basis. And this is something I always kind of encourage, anybody who's looking to help out maybe 1 hour a week or every other week. It's an opportunity to get a water sample, maybe from the creek, like in your backyard or in your neighborhood, and bring that to one of our offices. So here, you'd bring it to our office on a Thursday morning typically, and we've got a lab. And so we're making sure these creeks, these waterways, and the river too, and the lake as well, are clean and healthy. And right now we have around 180 different sites here, but as well as Metro Atlanta and the headwaters. And so that's about 180 volunteers who are coming in on Thursday mornings typically. And then we're also out on the river. If there's specific issues, we'll get water samples out there. And on West Point Lake, we conduct a monthly monitoring of the lake water quality, and we're specifically testing for algae or chlorophyll A levels in the lake, and that's a really good kind of indicator of overall lake health. And something, I'll mention, West Point Lake, the data shows that it's a lot healthier these days, and really kind of what we've seen is that over the last really 2 decades, West Point Lake has been a healthy lake compared if you go back 30, 40 years ago when you had issues coming downstream from Atlanta. But one kind of area of concern for us is the last 6 years have been the warmest years on record in Georgia. And maybe you've seen on social media reports of algae blooms. These are kind of bright neon green algae growing, especially kind of in still water in back coves, lakes. On Lake Harding, I know we're we're hearing about it a lot. We're going out sampling, and these algae blooms can be, especially if it's like that neon green kind of fluorescent color in the water, especially for pets, it can be dangerous to their health. For humans, less so, but it still can be put yourself at risk for maybe skin irritation. So it's something we're starting to see a little bit more often, and ties in with warmer temperatures. So we'll continue to monitor, and then all this water quality samples we're gathering. We've got a lab at each of our offices. We're using Environmental Protection Agency standards to run these tests so that our data will hold up if it ever needs to, be used in the court of law, something like that. And we also make the data publicly available. I'll mention too, we're kind of getting into technology, building our own remote water monitoring sensors. We're putting these out in a few kind of strategic areas. So it's a good way. It'll connect to the cell service and send data every 15 minutes, kind of on some basic, water temperature, turbidity, how much mud is in the water. So another way we're trying to stay ahead of the curve. I wanted to highlight one water quality issue that's not here in LaGrange, but if you go a little bit south to Columbus, we're kind of keeping tabs. If you're familiar, Columbus is right on the Chattahoochee River. I would say they've done some incredible work in restoring the river in the downtown area with the whitewater course. You've seen a lot of development take place now along the river. And there's kind of one glaring issue that we still see. They have a sewer system that in periods of heavy rainfall. So like if you get one of these summertime big thunderstorms and 2 inches of rain fall within an hour, it has the potential to overwhelm the sewer system, and they have overflow pipes that go directly into the river. And so the majority of the time, if you're out on the river enjoying it as a whitewater kayaking, the water's clean. That our data shows that. But during these kind of 12 to 24-hour periods during and right after big rainfall, you have higher bacteria levels in the river because partially treated sewage is flowing into the river. And it's an issue that is if you went to Columbus, I don't think many people are aware of this. And for the last couple of years, we've been kind of working behind the scenes, I would say, to try to address this issue so that the public really doesn't even have to know it's an issue necessarily, something that should be fixed rather than it become a big kind of publicity scare. And so, I say all that. We've had some success recently. The state of Georgia has agreed with our position, and twice now rulings have gone in favor of our work, as well as the state of Georgia saying that the Columbus water utility there needs to improve the system. So just an example, this issue, we've been working on it for 4 or 5 years, and there's probably a few more years left to be done to make sure that the river is its cleanest in the city of Columbus. So, kind of our work goes from the day to day to kind of working on long-term issues like this one. And then, you got trash. I think everybody's aware of how plastic trash is all over and around us. So we're always hosting cleanups throughout the year. I know this year to date, I think we've collected 40 tons of trash over about probably 30 different cleanups throughout the whole watershed. Especially in March, we hosted one big day, 50 different cleanup sites all across the watershed. And we'll get between 30 and 40 tons of trash, which is like 100,000 pounds of trash. A couple, maybe 1,000 volunteers will help us. So if y'all haven't already helped with the cleanup, these are meaningful ways to get involved. I know we often try to work with, schools, organizations. I was excited 2 years ago to start partnering with the Officer Candidate School at Fort Benning in Columbus. They were looking for volunteer projects. Kind of 3 times a year, they get a group of officers in training that comes through. And so you have about 120 gung-ho Army officers. You get to throw them in a creek. And like on this day in particular, I think we pulled out like 5,000 pounds of trash just in 2 hours. So that's fun. I like that. Maybe you've seen too, we're also starting to work with, basically, we call it a trash trap. It's a floating boom that you put in creeks, and you wait for a big rain or two, it fills up, and then me or my colleague Ashley in the picture or a volunteer or two will go out, every other week and, spend half an hour just collecting all that, bag it. Sometimes we'll kind of we'll write down what we're finding. So like 5 plastic bottles, 10 tennis balls, stuff like that. And we've kind of built up like a whole big data set, Excel spreadsheet of all the stuff we're finding. And sometimes if we find way more of one thing, maybe from one company or from one business, we'll kind of politely let them know that all their product is ending up in the river and the creek. In particular, one product, one company, Coca-Cola, kind of picked up on the fact that a lot of their products are ending up in our waterways. And so 2 years ago, they started sponsoring this trash trap program, which now we have 8 of them in the metro Atlanta area, which I would say is the most important thing for us right now, especially for West Point Lake, to make it trash free eventually. So we continue to work. I know I was excited to work with the Thread Trail here in LaGrange to put a trash trap at Granger Park on the pond there, which surprisingly gets some trash that flows through the creek that flows into the pond. So we collect maybe 50 pounds of trash from that trap maybe every other week. So if anybody wants to come put some waders on and pick up trash with me, you're always more than welcome to. I know, I've got a few other kind of little stories I want to share, and then I know leave a few minutes at the end for questions. This is another kind of issue I like to talk about. I was having lunch in West Point. I guess this was 2018, and I was at Pokey's having a little hamburger. And as I was leaving town, I looked over the bridge there over the Chattahoochee River, and I noticed that one half of the river was crystal clear, the other half was like chocolate milk. And so I've learned how to fly a little drone, and so I flew it up and kind of had to go up a mile or 2 up the river, and then saw that right, so it's all coming from this one creek, which it turns out to be Osaligi Creek. Also important for the city of West Point is that their drinking water intake is maybe like 100 yards further downstream on that side of the river. So, I reach out to the city manager, and he says, yeah, anecdotally, we're having to pay a little bit more to treat our water because of all this mud and dirt. And you know, mud and dirt is probably one of the long-term kind of biggest threats to a river or a lake or a pond. If anybody lives on a private little lake, you probably have to, every once in a while, pay to get it dredged out, just because sediment is always flowing in. But in extreme cases like this, it can really be to the detriment of that waterway, and the fish are gonna go away if it's always like this. So in that case, me and my colleague kind of went out for a couple weeks trying to figure out, and we kept going further up the creek. And it's kind of a rural area of Chambers County, Alabama, where it flows through. And then we realized that there's this new 1,500 acre solar farm that had just been constructed. And so we kind of start, like, we figure out who to talk to. We reported to the Alabama Department of Environmental Management, and they reach out to the owners of the facility, and nothing really happens for a month or two. And then we make a report to the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, and for the first time, like in 5 years, they send out a team to actually investigate a soil erosion case, because they saw the photos and they realized how kind of extreme this one was. And so over the course of, like, you know, the operators, they invest about $1 million to bring the site into compliance. And so now you got grass growing all under, you know, this 1,500 acres of what was just kind of mud running off every time it rained. And it's just kind of an example of, chances are, if we hadn't kind of spotted something like that, the issue could have gone on for months or more. Whereas I'd like to think by kind of jumping in there, and the owners too, that, you know, it's a solar field. It's like green, you know, it's green. And they were admittedly embarrassed that they had been breaking a law, essentially, and allowing that much mud to erode off their site. And it was also, you know, potentially going to damage the solar panels too, if enough soil eroded away. So that, I think for me, that's kind of another good illustration of having an organization like Riverkeeper, kind of an independent watchdog for cases like this. And another good result of that too is that the company started sponsoring our floating classroom program to get kids out. So that's always a plus. And you know what I'll share about the floating classroom is that we're about 600 kids away from having served 20,000 over the last 7 years since we launched. That's, for me personally, having kind of seen from the very beginning of the program to this point is exciting. And I know later in September, we're gonna kind of celebrate that milestone. And we'll get to celebrate it with some kids from, I think, Callaway Middle School, who will be part of our annual effort to get every 6th grade student from Troup County school system out on the boat. So that's always a benefit, but you know, it's not just Troup County schools who are coming out. We serve around 1,000 students from Muskogee County, Columbus schools, as well as a couple hundred come from Coweta County and Carroll County and Heard County as well. So it's a nice kind of regional program in that sense as a field trip. I think that's a group from Ethel Kite Elementary School that was out with us earlier this year. And it's, I mean, if you ever want to come, observe, watch a program, more than welcome to. It's, you know, get them to do water tests, give them binoculars, look at wildlife. I'd like to think it's a good 2-3 hour kind of field trip. For a lot of kids, it's their first time on a boat. We're out on West Point Lake, so that's always a plus. And, you know, it's really talking about, like, where your source of water, not just when you turn the tap on, but where the ultimate source of that water is. And I would encourage the LaGrange Rotary Club to come out for an afternoon or an evening outing sometime in this coming year. Always nice probably once or twice a month, we'll have a community group or just a group of 15 friends or a family come out on the boat for a cruise. And now I wanted to take like 2 minutes before I kind of wrap up to give y'all a history lesson. As a history student from LaGrange College, I feel like I have the license to maybe do this, but y'all have been hearing about the Oak Fusty Center. I figured a quick 2-minute history lesson on what the word, where it comes from. Because I've heard a lot of people like mispronounce it or try not even to pronounce it. And so the Oak Fusty Path is a noted Indian pathway that ran from Augusta, Georgia to Dadeville, Alabama. And so, in the 15, 16, 1700s, that was one of the main pathways connecting basically, the coast to these major Creek Indian settlements in this area around the Chattahoochee River. And then over in Dadeville, Alabama is the Tallapoosa River. That's like right where Lake Martin is. And so I pulled this map from a book, The Images of America on LaGrange. I think this was actually hand-drawn by Clark Johnson. And maybe I'll pull this up after I'm done if anybody wants to come look more closely. But so in pink is LaGrange. The yellow highlighted is the Oak Fusty pathway. It had a few kind of branches once it got close to the Chattahoochee River, but in like historical documented articles, it notes that the trail branched off at Lloyd's Church, which is kind of going out West Point Road, and that the path then crossed the Chattahoochee River at Wilson's Creek. And so where Pine Road Park is right next to what was Wilson's Creek as it flowed into the Chattahoochee River. So building a big new conservation center at Pine Road Park seemed like a good idea, maybe to pay a little homage to people who lived here previously. And they, by some accounts, identified as the Oak Fusty. This is a map from a book, The Old Beloved Path, by Dr. William Wynn, who's from Columbus, and it's about the lower Chattahoochee River history of Creek Indians. And you have LaGrange right here, and then you have 2 settlements that kind of identify the Oak Fuscany, and I'm not going to try to pronounce. But yeah, just, another kind of something that for me, I did not know any of this kind of existed until, a year ago, kind of helping look into all of this. So one hope I would have with the Oak Fusty Center, not only as a great kind of event center for gatherings, for conferences, I'm also very excited about the prospect that Riverkeeper may be able to have a classroom space there for our floating classroom. But also hopefully just maybe even in the naming of the building, that people will kind of recognize there's a lot of history here in this area. So the last little thing I wanted to highlight, and we'll leave a few minutes, got to do a fun little project with LaGrange College earlier this spring, and it continues. But if y'all have driven down Panther Way by the ball field, so you got the softball fields up the hill, the baseball field is on the other side. You've got this, it's Park Creek that flows through campus. And in the spring, we got a whole bunch of students out, got President Baxter out to do some, to plant some native aquatic plants, things that you're gonna find in a creek, in a healthy creek, but that we weren't seeing in this one. And we also noticed that over the years, I've always, I live right by here, so I walk by this all the time. And in big rains, I would see the banks just kind of sloughing off. So eroding, you had a lot of mud, dirt, eroding off the banks. And, this is maybe a common sight around here where you see a creek where the grass is mowed all the way to the edge. And it might have a certain aesthetic appeal to it, but when it comes to the health of the creek, to the waterway, can be detrimental to say the least. And so after our planting, you know, kind of a before and after photo, along with what we planted, which over the next probably 2-3 years will really start to establish. Right now, kind of what you just see is a lot of the grass that was there, just kind of has grown up. But over the next year or two, you're going to see elderberry bushes start to establish. You'll see planted a number of flowering stuff that the bees and all the other pollinators will like. I mean, simply it's going to help in some simple respects. It'll help bring the temperature of the water down. When it's just open and exposed like this, the water can heat up to the point where almost nothing, no aquatic animals can survive in water that hot. So just allowing vegetation to grow to help shade it, but then also all the plants, the roots are going to help stabilize the banks. And yeah, I guess kind of interesting fact, right? This creek flows underneath Callaway Stadium, and then it flows until it connects with Blue John Creek. And then Blue John Creek connects to Long Cane Creek. Then Long Cane Creek flows into the Chattahoochee River south of West Point. So, and you know, if we could do this to every creek, it would make the Chattahoochee River perfect. I don't know if in my lifetime we'll be able to do that, but I'd like to think this kind of sets a standard for others to maybe kind of model off of. So I'll just kind of wrap up with that. I know kind of everything I described. Hopefully, if you've already heard me talk about Riverkeeper before, I hope I maybe shared a couple of new things that we're doing, and definitely appreciate, you know, all the work we're doing. It takes the support of a lot of people, individual members, as well as big corporate foundations. So it's always appreciated. If you see what we're doing, you want to support it, I would encourage that, whether it's as a member or maybe through a company. So there are 4 things coming up. If y'all are interested in helping out, we're doing a cleanup on September 24th just at the lake, working with the Corps of Engineers on their National Lands Day cleanup. We've got our patron celebration in Atlanta on the 13th, and we've got our ghost storytelling cruise on West Point Lake right around Halloween. It's kind of good, family friendly. Get the kids out, you can dress them up, costume, get on the boat with us. So I will finish there. Maybe questions, and then Ken, I know you have a few updates to share. Joe?
Yeah, you said there are 8 trash traps on the creeks in Atlanta. How many creeks are there? How many more do we have to go to stop the trash before it gets downstream?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know a specific number. In Atlanta, I think there are around 10 major creeks that flow out of the city into the river. Each of those creeks then has a number of other. But maybe to answer your question, yeah, we probably, if we had 20 more trash traps, that'd be awesome. It would also mean we would have to staff up, and then, you know, you'd have to go through ownership as far as where to put them, working with the city or private owners. But yeah, I think the more the merrier when it comes to trash traps.
So with the Flint as a major tributary, is there a Flint River Keeper?
There is a Flint River Keeper. And right, you know, the Flint River and the Chattahoochee meet at the Florida border to form the Apalachicola. But right, you have a Flint River Keeper that's been around for 15 years, putting up a good fight too.
And they have trash traps and similar programs?
Similar programs. I know, like, for the Flint River, it's, you know, the Flint starts underneath Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. But beyond that, it's really not as urban an environment. I think they're dealing more with, like, runoff from agriculture and, more importantly, the lack of water in the Flint River. So I don't know if trash is one of their bigger issues per se, but yeah, each river, different parts of the river, all kind of different equation to protect it, I guess. Yeah.
You say the last 6 seasons were like the hottest on record. you count that to climate change, man-made stuff, what do you count that to?
Right, yeah, climate change. I know Riverkeeper, we hosted a climate change conference a few years ago to try and start the conversation about what it means to this part of Georgia and to the river. Right, warmer temperatures, we're starting to see the effects here in our backyard on our lakes with more algae leading to, at times, too much. That can be, yeah, for pets, also human health, putting at risk. So, yeah.
Right, brother.
Henry, tell us about the word Chattahoochee. Give us a reading about really good the name.
Right, yeah. Chattahoochee, as far as I understand, means painted rock. And that it is a Creek Muscogee Indian word. So it makes me think that at one point the whole river was perfectly clear and all the rocks were colorful and you could see them all. It might have still gotten a little muddy on some rainy days, but yeah, obviously I think the river looks different today than it did 400 years ago. Connor?
Fortunately, we hear very few sporadic reports of the brain-eating amoeba. What would it take before the Chattahoochee hosted that kind of threat?
That the brain-eating amoeba. This is the only thing y'all are gonna remember from today. I mean, I'm not aware of any instances. I also usually use the refrain that the river, the lake, it's not a swimming pool. We're not, chlorinating it to make it perfectly clean. It's a natural environment. There are all sorts of microbes, things in the water, but I swim in the lake. Again, we don't have any documented cases of something like that in the river and the lake. So if it ever comes to that, we'll be the first ones to let people know so that they can be safe. But our message these days is go swim, go fish in the river. And we want it to continue to be that way.
It just stands to reason that the cleaner the Chattahoochee is, the less problem we'll have with things that are bizarre like that.
Right. Yep. And kind of, making all the little creeks, everything that feed into the river, if those are healthy, then the river is healthy itself. So there's still more work to be done. But thank y'all.
I know it's going to be gotta go, but y'all might not know that Henry has been the program committee for the past year, and this is his final one because we're at United Way, and so that's kind of out of the ordinary for one person to take that big job on for an entire year. So we get a little token of our appreciation. It's a little bit early because it's a commemorative for our 100th anniversary. Now we start our 100th year, and so one says 1923, which was when we were founded. The other one says 2022, because obviously the 2023s aren't here yet, but when they come out, I'll swap you out. I know it's time to go. Do y'all have some time to do something crazy for Henry? Anybody, y'all got time? I feel like doing something crazy? Okay. Do y'all know the song Joy to the World by 3 Dog Night? Raise your hand. Y'all know that? All right, everybody stand up. 3 Dog Night is going to be at the Symphony on Friday night. But you know the phrase in the chorus, joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea. Well, today it's joy to the fishes in the Chattahoochee. So, all right. So where are the fishes? In the Chattahoochee. Okay. What's the first word of the chorus? Joy. Okay. So we're gonna sing the chorus twice for him. All right.
Yeah.
Y'all in? Yeah. Okay. So you're either gonna make you feel warm and cozy, or you're gonna scorn for life. So let's make you feel warm and cozy. 1, 2, ready, sing. Joy to the world. All the boys and girls now. Joy to the fishes in the Chattahoochee. Joy to you and me. How much louder now? Joy to the world. All the boys and girls now. Joy to the fishes in the Chattahoochee. Joy to you and me. I hope you guys are so long. There you go.